Hi everyone, I'm here with Noel from My Accounts today. Noel, welcome. We're here to talk all things ATO, all things bookkeeping, all things business. So yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. Appreciate it.
The great thing is between us, we always have a solution for businesses that find themselves in that position with ATO debt. So yeah, so welcome. So look, before we jump into it, Noel, obviously I know a lot about you and your business. Tell us a little bit about your business and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Bookkeeping company, My Accounts, is we've been operating since 2007, which is a long time. So a lot of iterations of the business. But what we've been finding is, I think, the evolving role of the bookkeeper, or even the scope of work, and exactly what we deliver changes. With the rising tech and advancements in our field. So we've as of late, we've gotten really focused and pointed and looking to deliver reporting to all clients. And so, from Vineyard 26, we're updating our mission to be the numbers that matter, and kind of get quite focused on ensuring that all of our clients, from a big bookkeeping perspective, know the numbers that matter, and we deliver it to them in a timely manner. And obviously, those numbers change from business to business. And exactly to your point, Michael, there'll be businesses that where watching cash in particular is perhaps paramount. Maybe say a startup that has kind of just received seed funding or something like that, and that kind of just dwindles. But hopefully, it's dwindling within the range that they are hoping for. Or conversely, might be a business that's looking to or planning to exit within say 3 to 5 years, and they may have EBITDA targets and things like that. So the numbers that matter to both those businesses are a little bit different. And it's just important that we communicate that to them and show them that. So yeah, numbers that matter is what we're focusing on this year as part of our bookkeeping offering.
Yeah, brilliant. Numbers that matter. And I think that's one of the things too, mate. And it's one of the things I love about your business is, a lot of people think bookkeeping is just bookkeeping and, it's sort of producing all the I guess the back end stuff that then, often goes to an accountant and you'll do some of the lodgements and accountants will do some of it. But it's a lot more than that. And it really is providing in those critical reports because a lot of the businesses that we say, well, look, how did you get here? And one of the things we need to look at is why it is that the business wasn't able to pay its tax sometimes over a number of years. And they say, oh, well, we'd get to the end of the month or the end of the quarter, depending on their lodgement period. And they just said well, there was no money left and we didn't know why and how. But if you're getting this regular reporting and you're factoring in things like tax, then those sort of issues go away.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I think there are multiple sets of advisors that rely on the numbers, right? So, tax sure being one, they're tax accountants. So, we are not tax agents, focused on BAS and before that. So getting the numbers that matter kind of reconciled quickly and up to date so that the advisors can make those judgments, or even and the business owners as well. Let's be clear there as well. Yeah, knowing well in advance if there is to be, say, a cash gap, or if variance to their plan is greater than expected, over a number of periods. So, a couple critical things that we're really focusing on this year is ensuring that every client has a budget. And then, like that budget process for some SMEs can sometimes be a little bit, almost ethereal. They're like, oh, look, I'm going to set a rough goal of, say, 20% top line goal, but whether or not they hold themselves that accountable to that is something else. But we do want to have that conversation with them and show them kind of the implications of forecasting something like that out, Michael, because let's say, and we'll report on that variance, and if we get halfway through the year and the variance year to date is, say, minus 50%, it's like, okay, well, should we recut the budget? Should we have another look? And then also missing by that much also has an effect on cash, obviously, because if they had forecasted, say, a 20% revenue growth, but missed that, they may have still been spending at that assumed rate of growth. And then so making sure that there's, sufficient variance reporting in a timely manner to say, hey, maybe a quick call to Michael and his team and saying, hey, if you need to roll this into an integrated client account or something like that, let's have a chat with Michael in the first instance and see how best we can manage that up front. How are you finding that sort of stuff?
Yeah, look, it's interesting and it's funny on that side of things. Is that as I said, a lot of the businesses we see art on top of their numbers, and that, and it's not like they're comfortable with it, but I guess sometimes they just don't know what they don't know, and so having that information, it's the old forewarned is forearmed, and having, we certainly stay in our own business quite close. I know what we know what our numbers are, we know what our churn is, we know what we need to produce every month, and without that you're sort of flying blind, and if you're just focusing on what's in the bank account, well, that's the only part of the story. It's not telling you what all your obligations are. I, yeah, so I guess the other thing too, and obviously we're here talking about ATO, and we're talking about ATO debt in particular, and it's a big topic at the moment, and it's certainly on the sort of lips of, we live and breathe it in our world, so it's always a big topic for us, but certainly plenty of people that we're talking to and plenty of businesses we're talking to are affected by it. Yeah, and I'd be interested to sort of see what you're seeing in the market and seeing with the clients that you're talking to and advisors that you're talking to around that whole issue with the ATO and the debts that are arising at the moment.
Yeah, I'm an eternal optimist, but I think over the last say 2 years, I've definitely seen impact to SME, and if, within my client base and within our broader network, there have definitely been some casualties amongst the client base. Like we keep saying, the speed to act, I think, is always the primary reason or reason a business will survive or not survive. The kind of the head in the sand type thing. And I completely understand. We're both business owners, Michael. Sometimes when that gets really stressful, sometimes you're fight or flight. Like, Michael, if you don't mind, like I was thinking about how we had a chat about a completely separate topic, but about our fitness, about
Mm.
both of ours, and almost like the accountability to such, and saying that I wanted to go for a run this afternoon, right, and trying to take away some of the excuses of that kind of thing. And I think the last time I even went for a run, I even shot you a text and said, hey, like just letting you know I went for a run. Probably it might have come out of nowhere, but I think that accountability matters.
Mm.
You know, owner to business owner, and having the people there to be like, hey, how's it going? Is there anything we can do, or just having that person that kind of cares, so from whether it's a personal health and fitness type of thing or a business fitness type of thing, having someone that you trust, just be like, hey, I'd really like to do this, go for a run, as simple
Yeah.
as that. Or hey, I think there's this debt building. I don't know if it's a reasonable amount or
Mm.
whether it's something that should be, but, they're the kind of conversations that we should be having.
Yeah, look, definitely. I think, and certainly, and look, you're right, the speed with which the ATO, and it's funny because I obviously do a lot of sort of speaking engagements around this, and I'm doing a webinar with one of the broker groups on Thursday, and we were talking about, what are the things that businesses can and should be doing, and one of the things I say is that, you need to engage and engage quickly. I mean, the ATO had this concept of active engagement, which used to be, if either you or your accountant was sort of talking to them and maybe making some payments, you're okay. But under the Act, active engagement means being in an active payment plan. And so that's the only way for businesses to be really protected now, is to actually be in one of those plans. The kind of the corollary of that is that not only do you need to do that, but you need to do it quickly, because the ATO are moving so quickly. I mean, I used to say to people, from the time period from when you might get a bit of a nasty letter from the ATO to where you're down sort of that end where your business is at risk, and the ATO may be taking action against the business to wind it up or to pursue the directors, you usually had about an 18-month to 2-year period. It's now sort of 6 to 8 weeks, and that's how quickly things are happening. And it's funny, I get that same reaction when I talk to people. But we saw a business only 2 weeks ago, and it had all happened in 8 weeks. Luckily, we were able to get in quickly and stop it. But the point around this is that, so the thing I always say is you've got to engage quickly. And on top of that, you've got to engage properly, and that's sort of the other side of it. Is that it's no point going to the commissioner and saying, either yourself or through your accountant, can we do A, B, and C, if it's not within the parameters of the legal practice statements that they can approve. And it's I often quote the Little Britain, computer says no. And it's no more complicated than that. And maybe I need a more up-to-date one, because I saw somebody the other day and they went, what's Little Britain? But for those that don't know, Google Little Britain computer says no, and it's exactly how it works. If you put something to them, and it's outside the parameters they can approve, and those parameters vary from business to business, then it is computer says no.
overall those parameters have tightened, have they?
I think they absolutely have tightened, and then within there's really no one size fits all. And one of the things that we are very careful to do before we even agree to take a client on is we'll do our own due diligence, which involves speaking to the ATO and finding out how far down the rabbit hole they are, because the parameters do narrow, and what the ATO require in order to approve something narrows. And then we'll go back and say, are you able to achieve this? Usually often they can, sometimes they can't. But if and that's sort of a predeterminate before we even take somebody on to help them. But I think if nothing else, you just can't sit around and go it'll be okay, or we're hearing nothing from the ATO, because hearing nothing means in my world actually is not good news. It means something's happening in the background, and then the first thing you're going to have is you're going to get a director penalty notice issued, or a garnishee notice issued, or reporting to a credit reporting agency, or God forbid you get a statutory demand to wind the business up. And these things are happening, and they seemingly come out of the blue, but they're not out of the blue. They've been moving through the system, and just nobody's been doing anything to stop it.
I was reading a stat in prep for this call that, according to ASIC's fin year 24 statistics, that inadequate cash flow or excessive cash utilization was a primary source of business failures. 52% was given as the reason for that. Does that line up with what you're seeing?
Yeah, look, I think that's right. I mean, we don't, and maybe it's also our reputation and who we are. We don't get clients coming to us that can pay it and don't want to pay it. The actual reasons behind how they got there vary, but at the end of the day, every one of our clients wants to pay the debt to the ATO, just can't pay it in a lump sum, obviously. And haven't been able to pay it along the way, but can pay it if we can get the right payment terms. And sometimes they've already gone to the ATO, and the ATO have said, well, look, we've looked you up on our system. Your risk rating is X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. We need 20% up front and the balance over 12 months. And the business just can't afford that. So that's what we're seeing. And that is a cash issue. And so, and we'll say, that's great. Then we'll go back to the ATO and say, well, we understand that's what the computer says, but we really actually need a different result and a different plan for this business, and they will work with us to get that across the line and get the business out the other side.
I always think that you tax assure, you kind of have like a separate line almost. I don't know if that's the case, but it feels like you do. Are you able to access a little bit of discretion outside of the kind of computer sets?
Yeah, look, it's not so much discretion in the sense that the ATO don't do anything for us that they wouldn't do for somebody else. It's a little bit like, and I often use the analogy with brokers, particularly if you're going to maybe not a big four bank, but you're going, you've got a client that's a little bit maybe not sort of blue chip and so forth. And it's what you present to the ATO and how you present it to them. And if we present the right information and the right support, then the ATO and they do have a discretion to maybe not go exactly with the strict line of what the computer is saying, but unless you can actually put the application in a way that makes sense and is what we call capable of approval by the commissioner, then they won't do it.
Okay. Are you seeing a way out? What's your prediction for, I guess I don't like defining it as pain again as the eternal optimist, but are you seeing, say, a kind of a bottom out and we're kind of out the other side within, say, a year or two, or do you think there's still a little bit of pain on the horizon?
Yeah, look, I think, look, it's a good way to put it, and people often talk about it when they're talking about the property market. Are we at the bottom, are we at the top, and everything? I think this one, whether we talk about it at the top or the bottom, depending which way you look at it, I think what we are seeing is that there is not going to be a lessening of activity by the commissioner, in my view, at least for the next sort of 18 months to 2 years. Reason being, and people who have sort of watched some of these videos before have heard me quote these numbers, but there's around $26 billion that was uncontested, undisputed ATO debt prior to COVID. Well, I use COVID as a thing, but it's a lot happened since COVID. There's been financial things going on. We've had floods, fires, all sorts of things. So, but it was around $26 billion then. We're now officially over 53 billion, and we believe unofficially over $60 billion. So I think until that number comes down, there's been small business restructuring, which has sort of chipped away a little bit at that. But we're seeing that the ATO are now not voting as readily as they were on these small business restructuring things and so forth. So I think that has been a bit of a help, but it's really, I think we're seeing the end of the use of that, certainly in the way it's being used. So I think it's going to be no more complicated than we've got more pain, if I can put it that way. But I also think, and again, I'm the optimist in all of this, and it's a reason why I love doing what we're doing. I think the pain in this case is optional. If you sit and do nothing, the pain is there, and it just gets worse. And the number of directors I see and business owners I see who say, I haven't had a decent sleep for 12 months worrying about the ATO, we can stop that immediately. And that's the issue around this is that there is pain, but there is also painkillers and there's alleviations around all of this. And if you engage quickly and engage properly with the ATO, they will work with businesses and they don't want to put businesses to the wall. They will work with them. And then once you're in an enforceable payment plan, you're bulletproof. The ATO won't touch you and can't touch you. Pain goes away. Businesses get on with business, and then it's it's a little bit like I have a daughter who's just bought a house and she's terrified about the big mortgage. But it's like anything, and there'll be people on here who will remember their first mortgage, and a few months into it, you forget about the mortgage because it's coming out of your account, and you just get on with living life. And businesses can do that as well. They can just get on with business and stop worrying about the ATO.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm no psychologist, but the little bit I know about anxiety is often it's around the unknown, and kind of overthinking, permutating all the scenarios that may or may not happen. But then, as you said, if you kind of just take a couple steps and get some certainty around some aspects and start to get a little bit of control, generally, levels of anxiety can start to reduce.
Yeah, they always say that first step's the hardest, but I think the first step is get in contact. Either, if you're a business owner here or you're an accountant, get in contact with the ATO, start that process. And if you get the outcome you want, I was talking to an accounting firm a few days ago and they said, when would we use you? And I said, you'd use us when you're not getting the outcomes you want. If you're getting the outcomes, you don't need us. But if you're not getting the outcomes, and by outcomes, I don't mean any payment plan, but a payment plan that fits your client, or you're getting the interest and penalties removed because there are grounds. If you're getting those outcomes, happy days. But take that first step, and then there's always the solution. We run stats on this regularly, and around about 97% of the businesses that we see, we fix. So it's only 3% that need to go down and have those sleepless nights.
Well, I can speak from experience. Us and our team obviously work with you, and I think it's no secret. We will have a crack on behalf of our clients, and of course our team aren't as trained at with ATO negotiation and things like that. But we will generally have a quick phone call and see what we can do, and increasingly so. I would say over the last 2 to 3 years, the ability for our team to lock into, say, an acceptable payment plan and things like that has probably reduced, and the need to escalate or refer on to parties such as yourself has increased. And so to that point, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too. And you use that term acceptable payment plan, and I think that's the key. I mean, we use sustainable, acceptable, interchangeable, but anybody can get a payment plan, but it's around getting one that won't kill the business and one that is sustainable and an ability for them to clear it, not worry about it every month, and just as I said, get on with business. Because you mentioned before about psychology. There's been plenty of studies done around the impact of stress and anxiety, and it literally drops people's IQs. And so I often see people, and I can see, and I'm talking to them, and I realize a lot of it's not going in because they're just so stressed. And then I get to see the other side of it when we say it's all done, it's all finished, and all the creativity and life comes back to them. And then they can then actually make better, forgetting the ATO, they can make better decisions in their business. And that's kind of why we do what we do. And sleep at night. Yeah.
Yeah, no, if you're not sleeping well, amongst a lot of other things, that I think makes clear thinking pretty difficult, at least from my perspective as
Yeah.
well. It definitely.
And tell me, Noel, what's on for the rest of I guess the next sort of, we're just about to start a new financial year, and no doubt you've been really, really busy. But for my accounts, what are you looking forward to in the coming year?
Yeah, so we're working really hard at kind of rehashing and making sure that the value we provide to all of our clients is as high as it can be. So redoing our reporting stack and inclusions in our offering. So making sure that we have both long form and short form reporting. So really nailing that numbers that matter. So providing, say, dashboard for kind of quick check-ins on like really tight numbers that matter to the clients, but then also if they need to drill down, maybe at board reporting level or management reporting level, that there's a multi-page document that kind of goes into much more detail. And again, addressing timeliness, making sure that those are all there. So, yeah, numbers that matter is at the very top of that, and delivery and ensuring that we can do that for all of our clients. Yeah, it's something we're working on really hard across the whole team. And it's something when you say, "Hey, team, we're going to do more," and we're not necessarily looking at charging anymore. So it's really a value play. When you're talking to the team, they can sometimes kind of look at your head a little bit sideways, but it's like, no, we can do that. So it's definitely looking at solutions that are out there from a technological point of view, and engaging with that, and embracing tech and being tech enabled to be able to do this. So got really excellent, capable team members kind of driving this forward for us, and really looking forward at nailing the kind of revamped product and service offering for my accounts for the next financial year.
Brilliant, mate. I look forward to seeing it and watching, our businesses both grow. I think we're going to be busy, which is a good thing. But look, we're both out there helping businesses and really helping businesses both get through, from our perspective, some difficult issues, and your perspective to thrive and so forth. So, mate, thank you so much for today. It's been really great having a chat to you, and look forward to. I think we have a glass of wine coming up at some point, and look forward to that.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure.